This is a Porter cable FN250C. I had a leak in the trigger here. The part that I replaced looks like this. You have to make sure that when you're looking up the part, you give the exact model, otherwise you could end up with a different part. In order to get this part out, you have to tap these two pins out. I used a hex and a hammer. You can use a nail or anything that's smaller. You need to be careful not to mushroom these pins because they're open on the ends. So be very careful. So when you tap those out, just go smooth with it. Then you have to take out this pin. This pin has a clip, as does this one. The clip holds the pin in place, whereas these are held under pressure. They're just in there tight, and there's no pin, there's no clips on these two. But this one does have a clip. You take it out. I took it out with a screwdriver, and in doing so I ruined the clip because it's very, very thin metal. So after I got the pin out, I actually have it reversed here. The pin was in this direction initially. After I took the clip out, the clip was ruined. So when I put everything back together, this pin I reversed. I put it in this way, and then I used a roofing nail. I cut down the plastic because it had a nice little hole in it that fit the pin, and it just popped on there, and it wasn't going to move anywhere. And that'll hold it until I can get a new clip if I so wish. And this pin, in order to get it onto this clip I made, I had to reverse it. I put this pin in the opposite direction. Instead of coming this way, I put it through here, and then I had enough room on the other end to put it through this piece of plastic. And then it worked great. Now, when you're taking apart, when you're trying to get this overall assembly out, you take out these two pins, this pin, and then this last red trigger comes out, and there's a little wire on the back side of this red trigger. You have to get that over the column, over the silver column there, and then it pops out like this, and you can see this little wire. And when you put it back in, you have to make sure that that wire goes back over it. And then you need to make sure that these holes all line up in there, and that this floats around as well. And this part under here also has to line up inside here. So this lines up with this, and then with this hole, and then you put the pin in. And make sure you lube, oil, whatever, these parts so that it's easier to go in, and try to clean everything out. So that's this part. Now, in order to get this out, I just took a pair of pliers like this, and I grabbed the hole and I yanked it out. In doing so, it basically came out in pieces. You can use an air compressor to blow this part out once the pins are out, but I didn't want to shoot the parts all over in case it didn't need to have the whole part replaced. I was trying to see if it was just one O-ring that needed to be replaced. So I used pliers, I pulled it out, this came out. Let me show you the assembly here. So we've got this piece, comes out like this, then you've got your cylinder, your column. It's not a cylinder, it's a column. Then you've got your spring, and then you've got this piece. And this is the piece that was leaking for me right on the end here. It's some kind of it's a different kind of O-ring. It's more like a rubber band. It's a different color. And there's also a lot of O-rings on this assembly. So this is why I replaced the entire part instead of just trying to replace the O-rings, because sizing these at the hardware store can be very difficult. And this piece I couldn't even find anywhere, and I couldn't find any place online that sells this separately. So I just replaced the entire part. Now, when I took this out with pliers, this part was still stuck in there. So what I did is I took you can use a screw or anything that can hook inside there. And so I used this bolt because it had a nice flat back end here. And I put it in when it was all inside there. I put this in there. I grabbed onto it, and then I used my pliers and I pulled it out. And it didn't take much force to pull this whole thing out. And then it just popped out. And then when I put it all back together with the new part, I oiled it. I made sure that I cleaned out the inside of the column here. I used a rag, and then I also used compressed air to blow out any dirt remaining in here, to blow it out through this hole. And then when the new assembly had to go in, one second. When this new assembly went in, I oiled all the sides. I oiled everything, and then I slid it in, and I pushed it down with my thumbs, and it popped into place. And you have to make sure that this is going to be on the bottom where it is, because it won't fit any other way. But this is part of the device, part of the nailer's function. So you want to make sure that you place it in there properly. Now, when I put everything back together, once this part is in, I put these two pins in. I tap them in gently. You have to make sure that everything's lined up. And if you don't tap it in gently, you could ruin them, or you could bend them, and then you have to replace them. So I was very careful to make sure that they were oiled and clean, and then I tapped them down into place. Now, when I put this back in, I made sure that the wire goes over the silver part, and that it all fits in there nicely, and that this part, and the hole all line up inside. So you have to shuffle, you have to just move it around real gently until you've got everything lined up. And then when you have everything lined up, you can put your pin, you can put that pin back in, which is this. And if your clip is still good, then you would put the pin back in through the direction it originally was. But if you've ruined the clip and you don't have anything else, you don't have any new clips, then you can take, like I said, something like this as a roofing nail, cut it down until you end up with this. Then you put the pin back through, and then on the other side you just clip it on, and then you're good to go. Make sure you re-oil your nailer as well. Here's what it looks like after I put the pin through the opposite direction. You can see it has a bit of a lip there now, but when I put my green tab on there, it fits pretty nicely. This green thing works now, but if I was going to use this gun daily, then I'd want to replace this, because this is eventually going to break down.